I think that Jordan Mailata may be a little bit of a favorite in Jeff Stoutland's eyes. Just the fact that what he's done with him, where he's come, how far he's been able to develop, and that's like a special project. And we saw that he played effectively at times last year, but Jordan's got some versatility, and I think the left tackle position is going to come down to one of those where how much input do we get from the front office? How much input do we get from Howie Roseman saying, hey, I traded up and drafted Andre Dillard in the first round. This is a guy that has to play. And that's it's if Andre Dillard doesn't clearly win that starting job, yet is lined up as the left tackle week one of the season, you know then that they're still calling the shots from the front office. And
Thursday edition of Birds 365 with McMullen and McDonald. We're going to make an addition for the final half hour or so here on the show. He's not well lit. Dan, when you and I are better lit than our guests, that's a bad thing for them.
Well, that's a bad thing because Rob deserves to be well lit.
Right.
I need to lower the light, but you know what can you do?
Mine's actually looking not bad today. Maaddi, you're usually looking good. What the hell? You doing it in the dark? The family at home? Or are you trying to be a considerate dad? What's the deal here?
Man, I don't know. I had a late, rough night, so I was just trying to get myself situated. I do have some lights around here. I even got the ring light and everything.
Hold on. Late, rough night. Come on,
work-related.
We're going to live seriously through you. Was that out on the town or just the young house?
No. I still haven't transitioned yet into my AP NFL writer role that's coming in a couple weeks. So yesterday I got stuck with the 5-6 hour marathon of a Phillies game in addition to 2-3 different NFL stories. It was a hectic, busy kind of day. Those days are over, Jody. Those were some good days though.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you were still doing the Phillies or if you've completely shifted over. So it's going to be more. Yeah, it's going to be nice for you to center on one thing. I do want to bring up, you let me know, your podcast, the AP Pro Football Podcast with Rob Maaddi. You're going to have Donovan McNabb on. Has that dropped yet?
So it dropped just a few minutes ago. I'm about to post we're going to share some videos out. Some interesting things to say from Donovan on there for sure. One of those was, I didn't know, John, did you know? I didn't know he says he mentored Jalen Hurts. So
I did not know that.
I didn't know if that was public knowledge. He just dropped that on me. I was like, okay. So he mentored Jalen Hurts. He's high on Jalen. And as far as, Donovan a couple of years ago had some things to say about Carson that went a little bit, blown out of proportion, I think, at times. And so I asked him about the Eagles and the whole situation. And his quote was, I just think the Philadelphia Eagles, they got to change a lot of things that's going on over there. And reading between those lines is going to be interesting. So we discussed that, and I know he's referring to the front office and some of the environment that has been created over there. So it's not just the most recent former Philadelphia Eagles who know about that front office structure. It's guys who've been far removed, like Donovan 10 years ago or so. So I thought that was very interesting that he makes a comment like that about some of the things going on over there. And then he continued to say, eventually over time, I think they'll make those changes. So I don't know what he foresees. I don't anticipate anything happening as far as Howie Roseman this year for sure. And I still think he's fairly in certainly good standing over there. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's a really cool, interesting conversation, a long conversation with Donovan McNabb.
Looking forward to listening to that. But before I do, I want to get a couple of things straightened out from you. I got a bunch of follow-up questions. Mentored Jalen Hurts. When was that supposed to have taken place and where?
Yeah, and I don't know if he was referring to mentoring Jalen Hurts as in on the field or just a conversations type and somebody to lean on. Hey, hey, this is going on. This is what it's like to be a quarterback in the city of Philadelphia. This is what it's, this is the media. This is how the fan base is, that kind of thing. Just gave him his insight after being here for a decade himself. So it wasn't really I didn't take that as he's out there on the field leading Jalen Hurts, because we know Jalen's worked out with different guys. He did say, I know who he's worked out with, and that's why I feel he's going to be successful. And we saw him win wherever he called him. He said he's a winner. Everywhere he's been, he's been a winner. And we saw a little some of the highlights, the splash plays last year, and he thinks that he's capable. But he was also quick to say that there's a lot more than just Jalen Hurts. Like he said, it wasn't all on Carson last year, and it can't be all expected to be on Jalen. The offensive line has to come back healthy, keep him upright. The players around him have to take a step forward. Dallas Goedert has to show that he can be tight end, a productive starting tight end. Miles Sanders has to protect the football and take another step. And then he said, I don't even want to get into the defense. So I don't know that he thinks that the Eagles are going to be a winning team this year, but he certainly feels that Jalen Hurts is capable of being a productive starting quarterback at the NFL level.
Yeah, and Rob, by the way, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Nobody knows about playing quarterback in the modern era. Maybe you can go back to Jaws, but a little bit different in Philadelphia than Donovan McNabb. So if he's on the phone telling Jalen Hurts what to expect, I think that's a good thing. But you mentioned reading those tea leaves in the front office. Donovan's great at that, saying stuff where you got to read the tea leaves. What do you think he meant? I look at that front office. My biggest question is not, how it's set up, not Howie Roseman. Who's accountable? Who do we point at? Is accountability the biggest problem when you look at that Eagles setup in the front office?
I think that's part of it, the accountability, because we've had those conversations, John and Jody. We've had those conversations with Jeffrey Lurie where he doesn't point the finger at anybody. And I wouldn't expect him to point the finger publicly, but it's one thing to not point the finger publicly at Howie or anyone else within the team. And it's another to go out of your way to defend, and in the way and in the manner that he does it. Now, he may think that his GM is doing a great job and he's won a Super Bowl and all things are taken in a 5, 6, 7 year span and evaluated that way. And I can understand where he's coming from. I just go off of what I'm hearing from players and when players who, and of course, when you hear things from players, right, you also have to take into consideration why would they say this? Are they disgruntled? Did they not get their way? Did they not get a contract that they wanted? Did they not get however it played out? And you also always have to take that into consideration. But the comments and the thoughts and everything from players, even within the team, still are of those that things are sometimes very I hate the word toxic because we've overused it, guys. I think it's become the word, there's words that become cliche words and then you keep using them over and over. But it's that kind of feeling where guys just think of, and it's not all, it's not the entire locker room, but there are certain guys in that locker room who feel that way about the front office structure. And we've heard different players say different things. And the fact that it's filtered down to Donovan, or he says in the interview, I was like, were you close to anybody who would fill you in? He's like, that's why I mentored Jalen, and there's a lot of things that I can't say and that I can't get into, but I know a lot more. So that's Donovan, and he doesn't want to be pushed on it and say that stuff. It's one of those things where unless the Eagles win, all of this stuff shows up, right? And when they win a Super Bowl, nobody's going to say anything bad about the GM or anyone in the front office. But when things start to fall apart, you start to see it. Now, look at the Zach Ertz situation. He's still technically on the Eagles, and that has been. It's mind-blowing at this point that here we are a couple weeks away from training camp, and you got a one of the best players that this organization has had in at least 2 decades, and he's sitting in limbo. Something's wrong there.
A couple of things. I prefer to use the word dysfunctional than toxic to describe the Eagles front office. Doesn't cut quite as much to the quick. So I stick with dysfunctional. And an individual who did Jeff Lurie a major favor this year is Doc Rivers, because you talk about defending people. Oh my God, did he set the level of defense higher than ever before with Ben Simmons? So yes, Jeff Lurie can go pretty far in defending Howie Roseman, and he won't match up to what Doc Rivers did. You mentioned Zach Ertz and the fact that, yes, he's still here. I got a question for you. I should know the answer. I don't, but I'll ask you. And John, if you know, jump in. Did he go to tight end U this week? They had this big gathering, the George Kittle get together, and you had to explain why he didn't invite Tebow. He said, I got to preferentiate with guys who have actually been in the league a lot. Well, Zach Ertz certainly deserves to go, but because he is having this, there's that word again, dysfunction with the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you even know if he showed up for that thing this week, guys?
I do not know. I don't know if Bob knows, but it just started. I think they're just getting on the field today. So we'll probably have a better indication if he showed up. I'm sure he'll show up.
Yeah, I want to lean towards I don't think he is.
Yeah. I remember Julie's got the Olympic stuff going on, so that might be a factor in it. I know they have 30 guys showing up, I think, at tight end. So he should be amongst them. Obviously, he got invited. I think if he's not going to be there, it probably has more to do with his wife getting ready for the Olympics and things like that.
Yeah, and trying to figure out where they're going to play next, even though that's not an option at this point. Yeah,
that too. But I agree. We were talking, Rob, yesterday. We're running down the Eagles' retired numbers. For some reason, Dave Zangaro brought it up. And I was thinking, the Eagles.
No, I brought it up because I was
10 years down the road after this is all over. And Zach Ertz, I mean, this is a franchise. This is an all-time great. It's amazing. You talk about toxic, dysfunctional. You got to treat a player like that a little bit better when you know the end game. And the Eagles know the end game. They don't want him here. Zach doesn't want to be here. Why this acrimony, if you want to use that word?
And that is an accurate word. I think there's what I've heard is some feel that there's some vindictiveness in this, in that they're trying to, for lack of a better term, stick it to Zach Ertz. And as you said, franchise great. You don't win a Super Bowl with him. Certainly a guy who you think would be on the Eagles Wall of Fame, undoubtedly. And I think they've shown more loyalty to players in the past who've done less than Zach Ertz, right? They've shown loyalty in the past, and here you have a guy who clearly they don't want anymore, who does not want to be here, and they could not figure out how to move on from him. The price was too high initially. I don't fault the Eagles for what I never fault a team for wanting as much as they can for an asset, for a player. So if you set the bar at a third-round pick going into draft weekend and you don't get that third-round pick, I understand wanting that. But then at some point, you got to figure out, well, it's settling time because he's not going to come back. We're going to have this issue. We don't want him here. And if we're not getting a third-round pick, but the problem is that teams have read the situation around the league. And why would you offer a third or a fourth or even maybe a fifth for a guy who eventually you think is going to be on the waiver wire, and you can go out there and pick him up or sign him after he clears? So that's how they botched the situation, is that his value has plummeted because people around the league are plugged in enough to realize, hey, if I know that he doesn't want to be there, and I know that he doesn't, you don't think other teams and other GMs and other front offices know the situation, you guys know it too as well. So why would you give up a third-round pick? So here we are, a couple weeks away from the start of training camp, and this guy still doesn't know where he's going to play, and it's an incredible disservice that I think has been overlooked, and I think in the city of Philadelphia it's been overlooked over the past couple of weeks because of Ben Simmons, Doc Rivers, and the Sixers' monumental collapse.
Just so you know, the reason I asked David Zangaro yesterday about Zach Ertz's number being retired is I don't think it should be. But then again, I don't think Donovan McNabb should have been either. I'm just not a big fan of retiring numbers when you only got 100 numbers to deal with. You got 90-man rosters during the offseason, and asking players to double up on one number, I think is just wrong. But that's a Jody Mack issue more than anything else.
Number 5 will always love you, Jody.
Yeah, I know. He gave a great speech. I thank him for giving us one of the most quotable lines in the history of Philadelphia sports, not just the Eagles, but he can love me with his number being on somebody else's back going forward, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of praise for Devante Smith after the Eagles took him, showed up at camp, did a lot of good things. This week it was Isaac Bruce coming out saying he sees greatness in Devante Smith. He's a guy who made it to the Hall of Fame going in this year and wasn't a tremendously large wide receiver. He poo-pooed the fact that he's only 166 pounds. How high are we going to set the bar for Devante Smith this year?
It should be set pretty high, but also take into consideration what the Eagles have not been able to do in the past with wide receivers and a lack of success they've had with first-round pick at wide receivers. So I think that tempers expectations a little bit, but it's a new coaching staff. It's a new regime. He's being surrounded by different guys. So he's got that talent. I will say this, Jody, seeing him up close, and John, you did too, at the open mini camps, the OTAs and whatever, he was even skinnier than I thought.
Yeah,
like I looked out at him when he was doing that one drill, that cool drill him and Travis Fulgham were doing, throwing a football to themselves, catching it. Neither one of them dropped the pass. I'm just like looking at this guy, and his ankles were like this tiny. Yeah. And I know some people want to dismiss that. And okay, he's fast, he's quick, he's going to be able to, but he's going to take some hits. He's going to get tackled. Like, this is the NFL. There's going to be some physical corners, and no amount of speed can make up for when you're hit, right? He's fast enough to elude and escape, but eventually he's going to get hit. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be able to withstand the physicality, the violence of the NFL, but my man is even skinnier than I thought when I see him in person. And that's just something that I look at and go, it concerns me slightly. And I still think he's extremely talented, great hands, excellent route runner. He's got tremendous abilities, and I think he's going to shine here. But I also would not be surprised if he takes hits and sometimes he struggles to get up from them, or there may be an injury as a result here or there. And he's bigger, he's taller than Deshaun Jackson, but he might be even thinner than Deshaun. I don't know if you took that from seeing him up close, John.
Funny story, Rob. Gary Cobb, our friend, actually, obviously the old Eagles linebacker, was at one of the NovaCare open practices, not the one you were talking about. And Gary just looked at me and said, man, that kid's got to get some sweatpants because his legs are so skinny. It is unbelievable. But the second thing I took, what you mentioned, he is skinny, especially in the lower body, but he is long. I didn't realize how long he was. So there's some good, there's some bad. I think he's going to be a really good player, but I'm a little bit concerned, just like you, about the long-term rigors because of the lower body. And you can't legislate injury, so I'm not sure what you can do about that. You just got to cross your fingers and hope the kid stays healthy. I do want to talk to you about your new gig. You're going to shift to covering the NFL international. You've already done it, but from an Eagles perspective, Rob, We've talked to a lot of national guys on this show, and none of the national guys expect anything from this team. I mean, anything. The power rankings, this is a bottom 5 team in the league. Is that just about a rookie head coach and an unproven quarterback? Are people undervaluing the rest of this team, especially when you look at the offensive and defensive lines?
I think there's some of that. And, guys, we a lot of people realize this too. When you're talking nationally, they're not as close to the team as we are, right? Yeah. And they're just taking a cursory glance at it and go, like you said, superficially, a rookie head coach, rookie staff, unproven quarterback coming off a horrific season. Yeah, they're going to be in my bottom 5. I don't necessarily think they're all that off, but I think that this team's got potential to be a little bit better than most of us feel about them. And I initially was in the 5 to 7 win category. I've bumped it to 6 to 8. 6 to 8 in the NFC East, based on last year, has you in the mix. 6 to 8 can come down to the final 3 weeks of the season, and you're right there playing division opponents. I think they got a lot of ifs, though, and we know that. There's a lot of different things got to break right for this team. If the offensive line, which you alluded to, but if they come back healthy, they're one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. But that's a huge if, because you're counting on guys who, in Brandon Brooks' case, has been injured and missed multiple seasons over the course of the last 3-4 years. Lane Johnson, who's getting up there and had a significant injury. Jason Kelce might be his last year. So you're counting on older guys to come back and be healthy. But if they are, and they play up to what we know, the back of their football card, to borrow from Charlie Manuel and his baseball card, then we could expect the offensive line, I think, dictates the entire offense. If they're up there, they're dominating, they're open up, paving lanes for the run game. And a run game, if in fact under Nick Sirianni, it's going to be highlighted a little bit more and used a little bit more, that's going to help Jalen Hurts. The play action's going to work. And if the play action's working and Devante Smith is a number 1 pick and shows you what he can, why he was picked that high, and maybe even other guys step up, and Goddard isn't much of a fallback from Zach Ertz, and then the offense can do some things this year, and then the defensive line is going to dictate, of course, how well the defense does. So I do think that there's some potential there, but there's a lot of ifs, and when you're holding on to if this and if that, that's a lot that isn't guaranteed. And I still think this team will be in the 6 to 8 category, and it depends week in and week out who they're facing, who's hurt, who's not, who's showing up, and who isn't. And 6 to 8 wins. Again, that'll keep you in the mix in the NFC East, but I will make one bold prediction, guys. The NFC East winner this year will have a winning record. It's not
hard. Well, you're going to be 9 and 8. That's right.
Exactly.
You're only a half game over 500. So maybe you're right, Maaddi. Good point. Last one for me, and I know you consider it, I can tell by what you just said. I know, John, because we talk about it all the time, and I believe it as well. Offensive line is a strength of the Philadelphia Eagles. It might be the strength of the Philadelphia Eagles as the season gets underway. But I still have questions. Jeff Stoutland's word and evaluation probably has as much gravitas as anyone on the coaching staff, maybe in the entire organization. So the left tackle position, it's supposed to be a competition because the head coach says so. I think Jeff Stoutland's evaluation there will go a long way in determining who is the left tackle. So I want to get your read on who's going to win that, how's it going to play out. But also, they used the 2nd-round pick on Landon Dickerson, who a lot of people believe would have been a 1st-round pick if not for the injury at the end of the season. If the healing and the rehab goes well, and he's good to go by maybe week 1 at the latest, sometime early in the season, you're not going to be able to judge him if he misses preseason. You're going on what he used to do, and then just what he shows you in practice. How are the Eagles going to get him into the lineup? Are they going to get him into the lineup? And if so, who's he going to replace along that line? If he's like your best offensive lineman in practice, the team should be looking for a way to get him in there, but they got a pretty stalwart line to begin with. How does Dickerson factor in as per Stoutland for this year?
I'll start with the left tackle question. I think that Jordan Mailata may be a little bit of a favorite in Jeff Stoutland's eyes, just the fact that what he's done with him, where he's come, how far he's been able to develop, and that's like a special project. And we saw that he played effectively at times last year, but Jordan's got some versatility. And I think the left tackle position is going to come down to one of those where how much input do we get from the front office? How much input do we get from Howie Roseman saying, hey, I traded up and drafted Andre Dillard in the first round. This is a guy that has to play. And that's it's if Andre Dillard doesn't clearly win that starting job, yet is lined up as the left tackle week 1 of the season, you know then that they're still calling the shots from the front office. And how far does that go towards there being a clash at some point? A rookie head coach doesn't have the clout to stomp his foot and say, no, this is what I want. This is what my position coach is saying. But that's going to be a very interesting situation to play out. Now, I don't know that we can really evaluate that just on a couple preseason games and the practices that we'll be able to see. They may be able to sell us if Andre Dillard is starting that, hey, no, he really did look better. So that's going to be a very interesting situation to monitor for me throughout training camp and into the preseason. As for Landon Dickerson, guys don't stay healthy, Jody. You know that, right? And I think that the best opportunity for him is going to be when someone gets injured. And if not, the one spot where I would anticipate that he could push for playing time is Isaac Seumalo's spot at the left guard position. And you look at that one, you know, he's not going to, you're not going to move Lane Johnson unless they trade Brandon Brooks, right? But I don't know how you're going to be able to trade Brandon Brooks. What other position can he play on the front on the starting line? So I think that might be, but you would be hard pressed to see when was the last time Chip Kelly's 13 season when all 5 offensive linemen started 16 games, right? And that went a long way towards the Eagles that year having success winning the division is that offensive line. So I think that's a shot. But this to me, the offensive line is one of the most interesting training camp storylines.
Last one for me, Bob. The NFL had their GM forum this week, quarterback coaching forum. You got some time with Brian Johnson. Anything from Brian? He looks like I don't know if he's going to be around here long, Rob. I think he's one of those guys that's going to be on the fast track in this league pretty quickly.
I absolutely agree with you. So what they did on Monday was the inaugural first ever Ozzie Newsome General Manager Forum. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday was the 4th annual Quarterback Coaching Summit. And what I thought was very interesting is that Brian Johnson, quarterback coach for the Eagles, rookie quarterback coach, was selected to be a presenter. So you have all these aspiring young head coaches and different coaching positions. And here's Brian Johnson. I believe it was on Tuesday. And I had the privilege to sit in on the entire stage. It was a 3-day event, and it was really cool. There was a lot of smart, young, and not just young guys. Like Eric Bieniemy spoke again. You got to hear from guys like him. But listening to Brian Johnson, watching him present to those guys, talking about developing quarterbacks and what's the most important the ways to do that, and he's just showing various clips and film, and I found myself sitting there watching, going, this guy is sharp. He does an excellent presentation. He's very smart with the way he's handling the players. The dynamic between him and his relationship skills and what he talks about, like you, I think that he's going to be an excellent head coaching candidate. He might be one of those guys who skips that next step. He can go from quarterback's coach if Jalen Hurts has success, and Brian Johnson's going to get credited for that. He's going to be a guy who can go from that QB coach spot straight to head coach. And it's interesting. Troy Vincent at one point brought up how, you know, we often hear about these gurus, right? We hear about somebody, Sean McVay's a guru. Well, there's a lot of other guys, right, who are geniuses, who are very smart NFL people that we don't often hear as much about. And I think Brian Johnson is certainly one of those guys. Jalen's in good hands. I think he's in really good hands with Brian Johnson. So that's going to be another reason why my expectation level for Jalen Hurts is even higher now than it was at the end of last season because of some of the people they've surrounded him with, the addition of Devante Smith, and now getting to see for myself what Brian Johnson is like as a coach. I'm really expecting big things out of Jalen this year.
The guy who I know, both of you guys will recognize the name when I say it, went from positional coach to head coach. He's actually had a pretty good run by the name of Andy Reid. He stuck around for a little bit and had some success. We'll see if Brian Johnson is the next guy.
He was part of this thing too. Andy Reid was, and he did a session with Bill Belichick, guys, and no surprise, you got all these people in the room. It's a webinar. It took, it's several hours and days long. And when they go to Bill Belichick for questions, his Zoom screen is it disappeared. Bill had technical difficulties for about 15 minutes. No shocker for anyone that Bill Belichick's got.
Did he put the dog up there?
Eventually, he got it to work, and he wasn't high on analytics, man. Bill was not. He called them shortcuts, but other than that, he was good. He was engaging, but I was not surprised that for 15 minutes, Bill Belichick was AWOL.
I would suggest he was screwing you guys, but that would just be me. Maybe I'm wrong. Mr. Maaddi, always a pleasure. Your insights are always top shelf. We know that. I'm just kind of bummed out that you had a long night and you were actually working. You're one of those young guys I still live vicariously through. Yeah. Hope you're going out having a good time on a long night. Glad to know you're working stiff just like me and McMullen. Thanks for coming on with us today, Robbie. We'll talk to you again soon.
Appreciate it, guys. You're the best. Thank you.
Rob Maaddi. No, he's the best. Here with us on Birds 365. All right, we'll come back. Got to put a bow on the show before we wrap this bad boy. Birds 365 coming back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.